Out of the new year, when we all get super hyper motivated to change our lives before we find out that the 6-pack of beer we like is on offer, and therefore have to start that first day of New Year's absolutely blitzed. But if you are going down that motivation route, then I want to recommend to you 12 books that have absolutely changed my life over the past couple of years. Well, 9 of them have changed my life and 3 of them have made me laugh. And I'm going to start off by quickly recommending that you absolutely don't read my book, because I wrote it last year as a collection of classic car stories, and to be honest, it's absolutely terrible. But for those of you who have a dollar to spare and would like to throw it away, feel free to find the link in the description below before we get into something more serious. So I've broken down these 12 books into 6 different categories that should hopefully allow all of you to find something that you can use over the next year to either entertain you, motivate you, or learn something new. So the first I'm going to start with is, of course, the one that us YouTubers love more than anything else, and one that was pioneered by Oprah, and it is, of course, self-development. And I'm going to start with 2 that I find are just a great way to start off the new year and give yourself some great ideas about how you can improve things without throwing the baby out with the bathwater, something that my wife is increasingly annoyed about me doing because apparently the hospital is more expensive than bathwater. The first one on this list is Atomic Habits, and I just think it's an incredible book because it does push a great idea that we just stop reaching for these massively high goals and expectations and instead make change at the system level. Essentially, one of the key phrases in this book is that we don't rise to the level of our goals, but instead we fall to the level of our systems. And he goes through steps of how we can build long-lasting great habits to get to who we want to be. And I read this book last January, and there were certain things that I've changed about the way I do things. Like, instead of spending weeks trying to write a stupid book, I have spent months instead building a small habit of creating content every day. And these types of small changes build up over time to give you lasting effect. So of course, like every other book on this list, there will be a link in the description below for ease of access for you. Just a fair warning, they are Amazon affiliate links, so I do get a small 4% commission if you do buy the book, but most of them, I believe, are free on Kindle Unlimited, because I love myself reading on Kindle. As much as I love having physical books, the Kindle just makes it handy for when I'm sitting by the pool or for reading at night when everyone else is trying to sleep and I'm not turning pages and using a desk lamp, for example. So you can get most of these books on Kindle Unlimited, but unfortunately there are a few that you will have to pay for, which is ridiculous in 2022. The second book in the self-help category is 4-Hour Workweek, and I know. Now, I'm not saying, because I don't actually follow or want to follow a 4-hour workweek myself. In fact, if you look at our Wheel Sports YouTube channel, that alone is probably turning into a 40-hour workweek, along with the other businesses that I have. So I probably need to work less, but I have never really wanted to go towards a 4-hour workweek. But this book by Tim Ferriss has stood the test of time in the fact that it does have some great mechanisms for automating and systemizing your life, as well as just freeing up time. And the one thing that I took away from it that I think you should read it for as well is the idea of mini vacations. Instead of locking yourself in to the 2 or 3 vacations a year if you're lucky, or perhaps the one weekend you get away without people screaming at you, look into mini vacations and allow yourself to work less but output more. And I think that this book by Tim Ferriss just has some great little tidbits that will help you over the next year to look at the world in a different way. And actually that stands to a couple of books later on this list as well. Now, when it comes to pure out and out motivation, the best thing you can do is actually take action, because there is a really weird thing that we all seem to do, which is we look for motivation to take action, when actually, if we take action, that gives us motivation. It's not the other way around, but I digress. But the first on this list is Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink, the former Navy SEAL. And this book is more about corporate taking responsibility for CEOs and that type of thing. It's very much tailored to his business, but there are some gems of wisdom in there, along with some amazing military stories, which just show how far those people push themselves. And obviously, as an Irish person from a neutral country, I'm not massively pro-war. In fact, quite the opposite, because I think it's pointless, to be honest. We could be doing other things like building more theme parks. There is some great knowledge in there around extreme ownership and in the idea of blaming yourself essentially for everything that happens to you, but doing it in a good way where you're basically saying to yourself, I'm taking ownership for everything that happens, but knowing that basically there are things that are outside of my control, and instead take ownership by focusing on the things that are in your control. And one of the things I took away was, well, if this guy can take ownership of someone shooting at him, then I can probably take ownership of the fact that I should start saving more. And the second on the motivation list for me is one that I absolutely love, and it is Losing My Virginity by Richard Branson. And the reason I love it is not because it's by some billionaire who's achieved a lot of the things that I think a lot of us would love to do, like waste money on an airline, put some rocket into space, or buy your own private island. No, I think it's the fact that this is a man who came from humble beginnings, had dyslexia, wasn't the brightest or sharpest tool in the shed, but was able to achieve incredible things. And on top of that, I think sometimes our world changes so fast in this digital world that we're in, that sometimes it's nice to go back and see what someone did in simpler times, and you'll see a lot of what he did just was common sense thinking, and over time was able to compound that common sense thinking into multiple billion-dollar businesses. And I think it's a great way to start looking at your life in a new way as well, insofar as that you can do things that perhaps you don't think you can. I'm going to switch away from the business, motivation, money side of things for a moment and give you a couple of ones for fun, because believe it or not, reading should be about fun as well. And I would give you one piece of advice before I give you these two books, which is don't absolutely stress yourself about finishing books, especially books that are non-fiction, self-development and so on. Skim through them for the tidbits if you have to, but you should have a couple of books that you just want to pick up and read. And two that I've absolutely loved over the last year are absolute polar opposites, but I think you'll enjoy them. The first of these is Ayawadi on Top by Richard Ayawadi, the English comedian. And this is actually a book that he wrote, which is a comedy as well as kind of a college thesis, if you want, about a Gwyneth Paltrow movie from the early 2000s. A movie where Gwyneth Paltrow tries to juggle the increasingly difficult lifestyle of being an air stewardess with her love life. And it's a hilarious book because obviously he takes the piss, but he gives some good insights into his own life as well. It's just hilarious. The second one is Knight's Ransom by Jeff Wheeler. I love a good fantasy or sci-fi book, and that's why it's on the list, but it's also a collection, and he's got a good few collections of books. So if you want something to just get yourself to sleep at night, I'm not saying it's boring, but something to just read to get yourself kind of calm down before the end of the evening, Knight's Ransom I found was a great read, and the fact that there was 4 books in the series really helped the longevity of it. And I'm kind of running out of fantasy books, so if you have any really good recommendations, let me know in the comments below. Now quickly back to business, but this is not business in terms of how to get things done. What I like about books is normally the little tidbit or perhaps the story of something else that gives me inspiration or more or less tells me what not to do, which one of these will do, and one of them will tell you how crazy the world is. The first one is Billion Dollar Loser, which is about WeWork, which is written by Reeves Widerman, which I'm sure I'm mispronouncing. It's all about how Adam Newman grew WeWork into this multi-billion-dollar company that definitely wasn't worth anywhere near what he expected. But what I loved about it was the fact that there are people who just by sheer force of will are able to create just these massive empire businesses or massive empires in the past. It's just incredible to read this type of story because for me, it kind of makes you think, well, what I'm trying to do is nowhere near that level, and what I'm trying to achieve, I don't even want to get near that level, but perhaps having that outlook will help. And that brings me on to the second book, which is Citizen Coke by Barto J. Elmore. And this is the story of Coca-Cola. And it goes through the story in a clever way, which is bringing you through the secret ingredients, quote unquote, secret ingredients behind Coke, and some of the crazy things that Coke has built. And it actually kind of links in to me with the 4-hour work week in a strange way, because Coke for generations didn't produce anything itself and was massively successful, but also the fact that they were able to be the only company that can import the coca leaf, which is the key ingredient in cocaine, into America is absolutely mind-boggling. So it's definitely worth a read. And interestingly, wasn't a book that I picked up thinking this will be interesting. I actually thought it was just something about Coke's business model, thought that would be an interesting read, and then ended up delving into it for days on end, couldn't put it down. So that's one I definitely recommend. And now, before I get on to the last one, we of course have to talk about money, because I think one of the things that most of us have a clear issue with in life is money. We either have too much of it, which would be a great problem to have, or we don't have enough of it, which we all seem to have a problem with, or the majority of us. And these are two books that don't bring you through personal finance in the way that boring personal finance has worked over the years. And I really hate budgeting. I hate all of that crap. It just doesn't work. I think it's too complex. And I think, to be honest, if you're really good at budgeting and accountancy, then you're not going to have problems with money throughout your life anyway, so no money book is really going to be any use for you unless it's for accountancy. So if you're not already on top of your finances, then accountancy is not going to work. And that's why I think these two books are a better way to do it. And that is, of course, I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. Of course, forget about the title, because he's not trying to teach you to be a billionaire. He's trying to teach you simple ways to automate your finances. And I think what I loved so much about this book is it goes back into that Atomic Habits book that I talked about at the start by James Clear, where basically it talks to you about setting up simple automated finance systems that allow you to enjoy the things that you really enjoy while saving money on the things that you just don't care about. This book for me was a great way to set up simple saving systems that have changed my life over the past few years, and I think it'll help you too. And that leads me into Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, and I'm sure I'm pronouncing his name wrong, but one of the things I loved about this book was it shows how, as children, we develop our financial systems, and over time we compound them, and that means that they're either going to be really, really good or really, really bad. And he just brings it down to changing my mindset around assets and liabilities. And that was one of the great things I got from this book, just that simple way of looking at life and looking at how wealthy people acquire wealth, and getting away from that accounting side of things and just bringing it back down to brass tacks. And now for two books, which I'm going to call Global Issues, which I think you could read for fun. That's what I did, but they also will allow you to learn some things about the wider world and different cultures and so on. And these are two books, ironically, by the same author, so you can probably imagine how Kindle got me to read both of them. The first one is Blood and Oil, and it's the story about the rise to power of Mohammed bin Salman, who is, of course, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, and loosely also the background story of Saudi Arabia. And to be honest, the whole thing is insane, and it of course covers the assassination of Khashoggi in Turkey. A really, really interesting book, and a really good insight into how Saudi Arabia and the world, I guess, is going to have to move away from its reliance on oil and the crazy things that this new Crown Prince is trying to do. And that leads me on to the second book, which is called Billion Dollar Whale, not connected to Billion Dollar Loser. An interesting Malaysian man who managed to con Malaysia, but he did it in a way where he spent billions and billions of taxpayer money throwing parties and buying apartments in New York, and actually getting private jets to fly people like Leonardo DiCaprio around the world for New Year's parties, and having 2 New Year's parties on the same day by taking his jet from Australia to Las Vegas, as well as that buying yachts and just crazy. It's an insane story that I think you need to read. And the only thing more insane than that story is subscribing. Goodbye.